Her name was Nora Vance. She was 36 years old, an architect who had once believed that with enough patience, even a cold marriage could eventually become a home. But that night, Gareth Miller threw a 4-dimensional ultrasound photo onto the dining table and announced that Chloe was pregnant with twins, and both babies were his. Outside the tall glass windows, Seattle rain slashed sideways through the darkness. Nora sat motionless at the end of the table. In front of her was a dinner that had already gone cold, with the ultrasound image lying between them like a sentence being handed down. Gareth showed no remorse. He leaned back in his chair, watching his wife with the expression of a man waiting to see her collapse. For 7 years, he had grown accustomed to Nora, enduring everything, correcting his mistakes at the company, and then allowing him to take all the praise. Behind Gareth, Helena Miller stood beside the fireplace. In her mind, this was not an act of betrayal. It was the Miller family's way of removing the daughter-in-law she had always called a barren tree that would never bear fruit. For 7 years, Nora had lived beneath that roof like an unwelcome guest. Every family dinner felt like a trial. Helena criticized the way she dressed, the number of hours she spent working, and always ended by questioning her about children. She said that when a woman could not give birth, every other achievement in her life was nothing more than decoration. Gareth had never defended her. He would lower his eyes to his phone and pretend he had not heard. Then he would leave home on business trips that lasted for days, offering explanations that became increasingly careless. Nora had seen everything. She simply had not yet found the evidence that would force her to confront the truth. The most painful part was not that Gareth had been unfaithful. It was that the woman in the photograph was Chloe. Chloe was Nora's half-sister, the woman who always appeared with a fragile voice and tear-filled eyes. Since childhood, Chloe had known how to turn pity into privilege. She borrowed money from Nora and forgot to repay it. She created problems and then cried, making Nora look heartless whenever she refused to come to the rescue. Just 3 months earlier, Chloe had sat in this very kitchen, embracing Nora and saying that she had just endured a devastating breakup. Nora had given her sister the key to the vacation apartment, recommended a doctor, and transferred money to help Chloe rebuild her life. Now Chloe was carrying Gareth's 2 children. A mistress pregnant with twins, a husband who had betrayed Nora in the cruelest possible way, and a vicious mother-in-law who had already prepared wine to celebrate. Gareth pushed a stack of papers toward Nora. He said the lawyers had already prepared the agreement. He would keep the mansion, the company, and all their shared assets. In return, Nora would receive enough money to leave quietly. He spoke as though he were offering her an act of mercy. Helena watched Nora, the corner of her mouth curling upward. She wanted to see her scream and cry. She wanted to see the woman who had always made her feel insecure fall to her knees and beg to stay. But none of them understood that Nora's silence had never been weakness. She looked at the ultrasound photo one last time. The pain inside her was no longer as intense as she had once imagined it would be. All that remained was something cold, sharp, and final. 7 years of endurance had come to an end. Gareth believed he had just delivered the final blow. Helena believed she had won. Chloe believed she was about to step into a life of wealth. Nora slowly raised her head. Then she smiled. "Congratulations to both of you. Give me the divorce papers. I will sign them right now." The smile on Gareth's face froze. For the first time that night, he felt afraid. The next morning, while Gareth was still sleeping in the bedroom that had once belonged to both of them, Nora left the mansion carrying a leather briefcase and every document she had quietly copied and preserved over the years. She did not go to the law firm the Miller family normally used. Everyone there had been chosen by Helena, and Nora understood that anything she said could appear on the Miller dining table before nightfall. Nora drove through the rain-soaked streets of Seattle and stopped in front of a glass building overlooking Elliott Bay. On the 17th floor, Marcus Sterling was already waiting for her. Marcus was an attorney who specialized in corporate asset disputes. He had worked with Nora's mother many years earlier and was one of the few people who knew where the money that had saved the Miller company from bankruptcy had truly come from. When Nora placed the ultrasound photo and the draft divorce agreement on his desk, Marcus did not ask whether she was in pain. He simply removed his glasses, studied her for a long moment, and said that Gareth was moving too quickly. And people who move too quickly often leave footprints behind. For the next 3 hours, the only sounds in the room were pages turning and fingers striking a keyboard. Marcus examined every business license, every copyright agreement, and every credit guarantee document created 7 years earlier. Then he stopped. Marcus turned the screen toward Nora. Displayed before her was the company's original registration document, containing a single line that Gareth had probably never bothered to read carefully. The sole legal owner was Nora Vance. 7 years earlier, when the Miller family's design company stood on the edge of collapse, Gareth had been unable to secure financing because of his terrible credit history. Helena had begged Nora's mother to act as guarantor. In exchange, full ownership of the company name, its professional licenses, and the copyrights to its major architectural projects had to be registered under Nora's name. Gareth was introduced to clients and partners as the chief executive officer. He occupied the largest office, signed business cards, appeared in magazines, and accepted every word of praise. But legally, he was nothing more than a hired operations director. The company Gareth intended to keep had never belonged to him. Nora stared at the words on the screen, her palms growing cold. She had known that her name appeared in the incorporation documents, but for years, Gareth had insisted that it was only a temporary formality. He had made her believe that the real power remained in the hands of the Miller family. Marcus was not finished. He opened another file. 6 months earlier, Gareth had mortgaged the mansion to borrow $2.5 million. The money had been transferred into a coastal real estate development that did not have complete construction permits and was currently under investigation for providing investors with false figures. Gareth had not only betrayed his wife, he had secretly placed his family's entire life on the gambling table. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He explained that Nora could immediately freeze the company's accounts, fire Gareth, and sue him for the unauthorized use of corporate assets, but doing so would alert him. Helena would hire another team of lawyers. They would demand audits, drag out the divorce, and search for every possible way to seize things that had never belonged to them. Nora remained silent for a long time. Then she asked what they needed to do to make Gareth willingly accept everything that could destroy him. Marcus gave a faint smile. Let him believe he has won. The plan was created that very afternoon. Nora would not fight for the mansion. She would not object to Gareth keeping every personal asset registered in his name. In exchange, the agreement had to state clearly that each party would be solely responsible for every loan, tax obligation, and financial commitment established under their own authority. Gareth would see the house, the luxury cars, and the expensive possessions. He would not see the debt bleeding behind them. Nora agreed to take an old car and $50,000 in cash. It was a figure small enough for Helena to despise, but reasonable enough for Gareth to believe Nora had completely surrendered. Before Nora left, Marcus placed the revised agreement in her hands. He reminded her that from that moment forward, she could not reveal a single emotion. No anger, no threats, no hint that she already knew the truth. Nora stepped into the elevator and looked at her reflection in the cold, polished metal. Gareth wanted her to sign the divorce papers. She would sign them, but he did not know that every page he intended to use to bury Nora was slowly becoming a financial trap that would lock around him instead. 3 days later, Nora walked into the notary's office wearing a light gray coat, as calm as if she had come to sign an ordinary design contract. Gareth was already there. He wore an expensive suit, his hair neatly styled, and on his wrist was the watch Nora had given him on their 5th wedding anniversary. Chloe sat close beside him, one hand resting on her stomach, even though the pregnancy was still far too early to show. Helena occupied the chair in the center, her back straight and her gaze sharp and cold, like the mistress of a house waiting to claim her prize. They had not come to end a marriage. They had come to watch Nora be stripped of everything. The final agreement lay on the table. Gareth would keep the mansion, the 2 luxury cars, his personal investment accounts, and every asset registered in his name. Nora would receive the old car in the garage and $50,000 in cash. Helena had read those lines again and again for 2 nights. She especially loved the clause stating that Nora surrendered every claim to Gareth's real estate. In Helena's mind, her former daughter-in-law was about to leave Seattle with 1 suitcase and her dignity shattered. Gareth pushed the pen toward Nora. He asked whether she needed more time to think, but his voice was filled with mockery. He wanted to hear Nora beg. Chloe was waiting for it too. She had already prepared a sympathetic expression so she could say that no one had wanted things to end this way, even though she was the one who had climbed into her sister's husband's bed. Nora did not look at them. She read every page slowly. Her eyes paused on the final appendix, which stated that each party would be solely responsible for every loan, tax obligation, and financial commitment made in their own name. That was the blade Marcus had hidden among the dry legal language. No one in the Miller family noticed. Gareth saw only the mansion. Helena saw only victory. Chloe saw only the wealthy life waiting for her. Nora placed the pen against the paper and signed. One stroke, then another. Her hand did not tremble. There were no tears. Gareth laughed and said that she had finally understood her place. Helena coldly reminded Nora to remove all her belongings from the mansion before the end of the week. Chloe lowered her face and pretended to be heartbroken, but her lips could not hide her smile. Nora stood and fastened the buttons of her coat. Before leaving, she looked at Gareth one last time and told him that he should carefully read what he had just signed. Gareth assumed it was nothing more than the bitter remark of a defeated woman. He was wrong. That evening, champagne was opened at the Miller mansion. Helena had food arranged in the living room, where the glass windows overlooked the dark waters of Seattle. Gareth raised his glass to celebrate their new future. Chloe talked about the nursery, 2 imported cribs, and a vacation after the babies were born. Helena sat in a velvet chair, holding the agreement as though it were a certificate of victory. She turned through the pages one by one, slowly savoring every clause that had forced Nora out of the house. Then her hand stopped. Her eyes froze on the appendix concerning legal responsibility. She read it again. Once, then twice. Her expression changed from triumph to shock, and all the color drained from her face. The glass slipped from her hand. It shattered across the floor. Gareth turned around and irritably asked his mother what she was doing. Helena did not answer immediately. She turned to the attached company registration documents and saw the name Nora Vance listed beneath the words sole owner. Her lips began to tremble. Gareth, the company does not belong to you. The room fell silent. Gareth snatched the papers from her. At first, he read quickly, then more slowly. Sweat began to form across his forehead as he realized that the company name, the design copyrights, the partnership agreements, and the entire corporate revenue stream all belonged to Nora. What he had kept was a mansion burdened by a mortgage, a real estate project under investigation, and personal responsibility for a debt of $2.5 million. Gareth's phone vibrated at that exact moment. An email from Marcus Sterling informed him that his executive position at Nora's company had been terminated, effective immediately. Gareth stood frozen as rain struck the windows. Helena clutched her chest and collapsed into the chair. Nora's quiet revenge had required no screaming, only one signature. 6 months later, the mansion that had once filled Helena with pride had a bank repossession notice hanging outside its iron gates. The neighbors stood behind their curtains, watching as each piece of furniture was carried onto moving trucks. The oak dining table where Gareth had thrown the ultrasound image in front of Nora was sold for less than 1/3 of what he had paid for it. The luxury cars disappeared first, then came the paintings, the expensive wine, and everything Helena had once used to prove the Miller family's status. Gareth had tried to fight back. He called his former business partners and demanded that they continue working with him. None of them agreed. Their contracts belonged to the company Nora owned, and Gareth's reputation had existed only while he stood inside her shadow. That was when he finally understood the most frightening truth. Nora had not taken the company away from him. The company had never belonged to him. The $2.5 million loan came due while the real estate project had become almost worthless. The bank discovered that several mortgage documents contained false information. Gareth was summoned to explain himself, his personal accounts were frozen, and his case was transferred to the Financial Fraud Investigation Department. The man who had once believed he was the center of every room now spent hours sitting outside lawyers' offices, waiting for other people to decide his future. Eventually, Gareth filed for personal bankruptcy. Chloe left before the paperwork was completed. As soon as she learned that the mansion was about to be repossessed, she packed her clothes, jewelry, and the gifts Gareth had bought her. She left behind a short note saying that she could not live under so much stress while pregnant. Gareth called her dozens of times. Chloe never answered. She had once believed that she had stolen Nora's life, but all she had taken was a man drowning in debt, a family falling apart, and promises built with someone else's money. Helena paid her own price as well. She sold all her jewelry to hire lawyers for her son, then moved into an old apartment outside the city center. There were no servants, no parties, no one willing to sit patiently and listen to her talk about the reputation of the Miller family. Every morning, Helena looked at the empty box that had once held her necklaces and thought of Nora. The daughter-in-law she had called useless had built everything. The son she had worshipped had destroyed everything. On the other side of Seattle, Nora began again in a room overlooking the sea. She named her new studio after herself, Vance Architecture. There was no grand party on opening day, only Marcus, several former employees, and the business partners who had worked with Nora for years. They did not come out of pity. They came because they knew who had truly created the designs, rescued delayed projects, and kept the company alive through its most difficult years. Within only a few months, Nora's studio secured the contract to design a coastal commercial complex. It was the largest project of her career. But success was not what made Nora happiest. It was waking up in the morning without hearing Helena's cruel criticism. It was eating dinner without Gareth's cold silence. It was the feeling of walking into her own small home and knowing that no one had the right to make her feel inferior. Nora had once believed that revenge meant watching the person who betrayed her suffer. In the end, she understood that quiet revenge was not found in their destruction. It was found in the fact that she no longer needed anyone's approval, apology, or regret. She had not destroyed the Miller family. They had done that themselves through greed, betrayal, and the belief that Nora was too weak to fight back. One afternoon, Nora stood before the studio windows and watched the sunlight stretch across the water. She was no longer angry. There was only peace. The sweetest revenge is not making someone else lose everything. It is reclaiming yourself. If you were Nora, and you were betrayed by your own husband and family, would you quietly prepare to reclaim justice, or would you walk away without looking back? Share your opinion in the comments. Do not forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Thank you for listening. What would you have done in Nora's place? Would you have confronted them immediately, or stayed silent until the truth destroyed everything they tried to steal? Share your opinion in the comments, because every betrayal has a price, and everyone sees justice differently. If this story kept you watching until the end, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more powerful family drama stories filled with betrayal, hidden secrets, and unexpected revenge. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes walking away is not surrender, it is the beginning of freedom.